Let's begin a book, Meditation and Spiritual Life, Swami Yatishwarananda, published by Ramakrishna Mutt, Bangalore, India. Publisher's note: Be bold and face the truth, said Swami Vivekananda. Here is a book which teaches you how to do this. Here is a book for the guidance of sincere spiritual aspirants who have heard the divine call, who have, in response to it, accepted God realization, or what amounts to the same, self realization, as the highest goal of life, who consider no sacrifice too great, no price too high for the attainment of that goal. Interest in yoga and other forms of Indian spirituality has in recent times become worldwide. Disillusioned with the promises of institutional religions and the glamour of science and technology, recoiling from the evils of a materialistic culture, countless people in the West are seeking a new orientation to life and reality. And a number of books and periodicals are being brought out in India and abroad to meet this cultural need. Not all these books, however, have equal authenticity or value, nor is it true that all those who turn to Oriental thought are genuine seekers of the ultimate truth. Many are in search of an intellectual framework which suits their thoughts and actions. Some others are attracted to the miraculous, the exotic, spooky elements of religion. But there is always a small group of sincere aspirants who never stop short of genuine spiritual realization and fulfillment. It is to meet the spiritual needs of this less obtrusive but more important group that this book has been designed. The author of this book, Swami Yatishwarananda, was well known during his lifetime as an illumined soul, an eminently capable spiritual director, a most affable and gentle personality endowed with a deep understanding of human problems and great love and sympathy for all people. A much respected senior monk of the Ramakrishna order and later on its vice president, the Swami was one among the foremost disciples of Swami Brahmananda, the great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. A brief account of the life of the Swami and his reminiscences of his Guru have been included in the beginning of this book. In 1933, in response to the earnest request of Wolfram H. Koch and a few other German students of Vedanta, the order sent Swami Yatishwarananda to Wiesbaden, Germany, from where 3 years later the Swami shifted the center of his activities to Switzerland, Geneva, Lausanne, Zurich, Camphor, and St. Moritz. He also made occasional visits to France and Holland. Not a preacher in the conventional sense of the term, the Swami laid greater stress on practice than on theory. During his 6 years of stay in Europe, he tried to organize small circles of sincere spiritual aspirants who were eager to attain self realization and were willing to bear the rigors of the spiritual path. He took classes for them on books like the spiritual teachings of Swami Brahmananda, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Bhagavad Gita, the Uddhava Gita, the Narada Bhakti Sutras, and and selections from the Upanishads. But in the spiritual fare that he laid out for his European students, the piece de resistance was the spiritual teachings of Swami Brahmananda. This book was the trendsetter, and it may even be stated that all his class talks given in Germany and Switzerland were an elaboration of the teachings of his own master. Through the influence of the Swami, many lives were changed, and several men and women seemed to find some deep spiritual fulfillment. Though none of these early students became members of the Ramakrishna order or took monastic vows, the Swami hoped that many of them would, in due course, become living channels for the diffusion of Vedanta and the ideals of the Ramakrishna movement in that part of the globe. With this end in view, he tried to train them in an exclusively spiritual way of life and gave them detailed instructions regarding the practice of strict chastity, detachment, renunciation, purity in interpersonal relationships, strength of mind, complete self surrender to the divine, prayer, meditation, and above all, seeing God in all men and women. Himself fresh from the spiritual arena and filled with a divine fervor to share the experiences of his own exalted life with those sincere aspirants whom destiny had entrusted to his spiritual ministration, the Swami exhorted his students to practice intense meditation and make an all out effort to realize the ultimate goal of life. A measure of the zeal and earnest response of his students could be seen in the meticulous care with which some of them took down verbatim notes of these class talks. The pioneering work of Swami Yatishwarananda in Europe ground to a halt with the eruption of the Second World War, but a valuable legacy of his sacrifice has come down to us in the form of these notes. Selections of these were later on published in Vedanta Kesari during the years 1938 to 40. Some of the notes were translated into French by Jean Herbert and published under the title Swami Brahmananda, Discipline Monastique, Commentaires de Swami Yatishwarananda. The original notes of all the talks the Swami gave in Europe, the files of which are preserved in the archives of Sri Ramakrishna Ashrama, Bangalore, form the main core of the present book, which is now being published more than 12 years after his demise. In the year 1940, Swami Yatishwarananda left Europe and went to the United States, where he opened a new Vedanta center in Philadelphia. The experience he had gained from his work in Europe and now his acquaintance with the American culture taught him that though a large number of people were attracted to the ideal of a contemplative life, few had the inner qualifications to actualize that ideal. The more than 250 talks on as many themes that he gave in Philadelphia, the notes of which are preserved in the archives of Bangalore Ashrama, show a distinct change in his methods of teaching and spiritual direction, which became mellowed and less rigorous. Reasoning, self analysis, based on the then popular Freudian psychology. A balanced outlook on life and an attitude of acceptance, spiritualization of secular work, and service to God and man topped the list of priorities in the scheme of spiritual life that the Swami presented to his American students. He also started including in his talks humorous stories and anecdotes to illustrate his points or to relieve the strain of long listening. A few of these talks, given in Philadelphia and others given later on in Bangalore, India, were brought together in the book The Adventures in Religious Life, published a few years after the Swami's return to India. In the present book, we have included some materials from the Philadelphia talks, but the major portion consists of the notes of class talks given in Germany and Switzerland. As already pointed out, the spiritual instructions contained in these talks were meant for a small group of young men and women whom he wanted to train for an intensely spiritual life. The uncompromising tone of many of these instructions may appear to some of our readers to be too severe and the instructions too difficult to practice. We are, however, publishing them in the hope that, on the other hand, those who are struggling hard in spiritual path will get immense benefit from them. This is not a book of philosophy, but a document of a lifetime's experiences of a spiritual genius. Let the reader exercise his common sense and take from it as much as he can actually put into practice. Time is an important factor. Swami Yatishwarananda once remarked, one must wait patiently till one sees one's way clearly by the grace of the Lord. If this book serves to kindle the fire of aspiration in a few sincere hearts and enables them to follow the true path of spiritual life, we shall consider our labors amply rewarded. After the publication of The Adventures in Religious Life, Swami Yatishwarananda expressed a wish to some of his disciples to bring out another book on practical spirituality which would give more detailed and intimate instructions on meditative life. He seemed to have entertained the idea of incorporating in it some of the Wiesbaden and St. Moritz class talks and excerpts from some of his letters to his European students. We are now bringing out this present collection of most of his important spiritual instructions in the hope that it will bring to fruition his wish to a great extent. About half the matter in the book is now officially appearing in print for the first time. The other half is derived from articles previously published in various journals at different times. Being a posthumous publication, it is difficult to know how the author would have liked to have his contents arranged. However, following his favorite way of classifying spiritual themes, we have divided the book into three parts with the titles The Ideal, Practice, and Experience. Every seeker of truth must learn to order his life according to a definite pattern. He must, first of all, have a clear understanding of the goal he is striving for. A theoretical knowledge of the real nature of the soul, the universe, and God, and their interrelationships is to be gained before one embarks on the spiritual journey. The purpose of part 1, entitled The Ideal, is to help the aspirant in this task. Part 2, entitled Practice, is divided into two sections. The first section deals with the qualifications and preparations necessary for a life of intense prayer and meditation. Considering the great importance the author attached to this subject, we have allotted a considerably large space to it in the subject, in the hope that it will act as a corrective to the modern tendency to minimize or overlook the need for strict discipline and purity of mind in meditative life. The second section gives an account of the actual spiritual techniques to be practiced by aspirants according to their aptitude and stage of spiritual growth. Part 3 discusses the spiritual experiences that a persevering seeker is likely to be blessed with, and also some of the psychological reactions that often come in the wake of such experiences. It concludes with brief accounts of the lives of some of the great saints of world religions. A fourth part brings together a number of stray thoughts of the author, mostly recorded at St. Moritz, Switzerland. We have tried to preserve the thoughts of the author in their original form throughout the book. The informal conversational style of the class talks has been retained, but for the sake of greater clarity and practical utility, we have rearranged the lines and paragraphs in the original published and unpublished papers so as to give greater coherence to ideas and organic unity to the whole book. There is now a sequential development of ideas, not only from the first chapter to the last, but also within each chapter. The reshuffling has also served to eliminate repetition of ideas to a great extent. But in a work of this kind, some repetition is unavoidable and may even be a necessity. Many of the captions and subheadings found in the original papers have been retained, but new ones have been added wherever found necessary. The two chapters on the lives of saints included in the third part are based on an abridged version of a series of lectures on the subject given by Swami Yatishwarananda in Bangalore during 1956 to 58. This book is not a systematic exposition of the philosophy of Hindu sadhana, but it has its own distinct theoretical framework. Beneath the instructions, admonitions, and practical hints lie embedded certain fundamental principles which the author found to be universally true in the course of his years of effort and practice. Some of these presuppositions, which form the foundation of the whole book, have been codified in the form of what we often call the laws of spiritual life. They are as follows. Number one, whatever we take to be real for the time being affects our whole personality, thoughts, emotions, and actions. Our whole being responds to this reality. Number two, our concept of reality depends upon our concept of ourselves. That is, man's conception of God evolves with the evolution of his consciousness. Spiritual awakening, number three, is the transformation of one's consciousness, which means moving from a lower center to a higher center of consciousness. Fourth, though distinct from a moral imperative, spiritual aspiration must be supported by it. The practice of concentration, meditation, if not preceded and followed by purification of mind and sublimation of instincts, is likely to lead the aspirant astray. Fifth, each aspirant must first understand where he is and begin from there. But making the best use of the protection and support given to him during the early years of his life, he should outgrow them and stand on his own legs, drawing his sustenance more from the divine than from men and institutions. This is the law of spiritual growth. It means that an aspirant can move forward in the spiritual path only if he is prepared to abandon the supports which helped him in the earlier stage. Sixth, the realization of the absolute, the transcendental reality, lies always through the realization of the immanent divine principle, the holy personality. Ishtadevata is a manifestation of this divine principle. Seventh, the more our consciousness expands, the more we see the divine in all people, and the more spiritual we become. Meditation in Spiritual Life is the first important book in English published by Swami by Sri Ramakrishna Ashram of Bangalore, of which Swami Yatishwarananda was the president for 15 years, 1951 to 66. Its publication has been made possible in the first place through the devoted care with which some of his students had kept an accurate record of his talks and personal instructions. The gratitude of the readers of this book naturally goes to them. The generous monetary contributions made by a large number of devotees in India and abroad have served to meet a major part of the cost of printing this book, and to all of them we extend our thanks. Our thanks also go to many others who helped the publication in several ways on several occasions. We send forth this book with the fervent hope that it will prove to be an unfailing source of inspiration, guidance, and solace to numerous spiritual aspirants in the East and the West in their journey from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, and from death to immortality.